right, this should be coming through loud and clear if you're rewatching this later. And we'll just give everyone a minute to tune in. We've already got 160 waiting. That's fantastic. So, hey, Jamie, Robbie, Reese, Bronco, Wen Mullet. Haven't seen you tune in before. I like that picture as well, Mullet Man. Hey, Andy. Hey, Ryan. Okay, so click refresh, guys, and the live stream should start. We're going to talk about gold and silver selling out as well, for sure. And stock markets have just closed right near the lows there again. Bitcoin, we've got half an hour to the daily close here, and Bitcoin's a really important level after we've been chopping around after that nasty sell-off. And we've been watching this triangle. For those of you that traded in the group, there was a nice trade there, and we've come back and we've touched it and retested it, which is all pretty common and good so far, but we want to close above here on the daily candle. But we're going to get to that in just a second. We'll give everyone a little minute to tune in. And we're going to talk about the Fed printing $1 trillion a day to support markets on top of everything else they've done this week. How crypto's reacted a little bit differently this week. How gold and silver's reacted. Since those peaks up around $1,700. And boy, oh boy. XAUAUD is the Aussie dollar gold price, and hasn't the Aussie dollar absolutely tanked? And this wick up on gold was actually when the Aussie dollar wicked down to 55 cents briefly the other day. And this was actually a little trade that I've been looking at as well, and I want to talk about this capitulation and this bounce because the inquiries we've been getting have just absolutely exploded this week through the website, through our Facebook public group, obviously our members group. You guys get to ask questions whenever you like, but it has just been insane, the amount of people that want to know what is going on with the world, with their retirement, with the stock market, which is fair enough. So guys, if you can hit that like button, share this around if you've got any crypto groups or chats that you're in, and we'll get into it in just a second. If you're new to the channel, when we do live streams, we normally give everyone a couple of minutes to tune in, and if you're rewatching this later, you can just skip forward to the section that you want to watch. And we're over 300 watching now on a nice Saturday morning, and I hope plenty of you are at home and self-isolating, and we're going to get to all that in just a second as well. Feel free to ask those questions, and if we've got some spare time before the daily close, or if there's plenty of questions coming in, hopefully we get over 1,000 watching live, I'll try and answer those chats. I'll go back through the chat in just a second. Sorry, it is Saturday in Australia. I forget about our friends overseas. It's still, it's only, I think, Friday afternoon in America. The markets have just closed, and it's Friday night in Europe. Oil back below $20, is that right? CL is the crude oil futures contract. We had a bit of a wick below to about, looks like it's around $20. Pretty nuts there. For those of you that want to trade the oil ETF, whatever broker you're with, eToro, for example, the ticker is USO, so it's US oil. And it's gone from $13 to $4 in a couple of weeks. And that interview with Marika Tusa, where we talk about the oil wars and how all the US energy companies that have got a lot of debt, they can't make money, and they are going to start to go bust. They're going to default on their debt. That debt is going to become junk debt. That's going to bring down the bond market that is a house of cards. That's going to bring down the wider corporate debt market, and that can bring down the stock market. So this is why the Fed have started printing all this money to bail everyone out. And well, let's get into that now. So the big headline just this morning is that CNBC tweeted out breaking news. The Fed have extended, on top of everything else they've done this week, $1 trillion a day in repo markets. So in injecting that money basically into the lending markets where there's demand for US dollars, and there's not enough US dollars in the world right now. Everyone wants US dollars. Every country. It's not just the US and the banks that are short of dollars. Everyone wants US dollars. And so they're having to just pump this money in because banks are nervous. Even if they've got some US dollars, they're not lending because there's, as we just spoke about, defaults, crashes. We've seen the first hedge fund go under. I just read on Zero Hedge. So obviously I'll go through all the news in more detail and in order tomorrow in our Sunday video. But just to put this in some context for people, this is the thing that does my head in. And if you've watched my top 10 finance and economics documentaries, a lot of you have watched Mike Maloney's series, you understand how all this works. So this is the equivalent of giving every American $3,000 US dollars a day. But instead, it's these guys that have paid themselves huge salaries, huge bonuses, borrowed all this money at zero rates, bought back all their shares, got even bigger performance bonuses. They've made themselves wealthy and all their shareholders, the top 1%. And then here we are, literally 1 week into a bear market. Oh, we've got no money. We're going to have to default. We need a bailout. Someone like Qantas in Australia gets a bailout from the government and they still fired 20,000 employees. And I know these are tough situations and I don't necessarily have the solution, but all I know is that something has to change. We can't have this system where the rich get rich and as soon as something goes wrong, they get bailed out. But the everyday guy on the street, he's struggling. He hasn't even had a pay rise and now he's lost his job. So he gets the raw end of the stick. And it's the rich guys that have got enough money to last 10 lifetimes. It doesn't even matter if they have to shut down their business or if they have to self-isolate. They've probably flown off to the island where they've got their food and everything like that. It is so, unbalanced, this financial system we currently have. And something has to change now. 2 financial crises within, 10, 11 year period. I hope we see some changes come from this. So as I just mentioned at the start of this video, we've had hundreds of inquiries about, how do I learn about finance and economics? Watch those top 10 documentaries. So just search top 10 finance and economics documentaries. Should be the top result on YouTube. We're putting out as much content and resources as we can. If you go to our website and look at the resources hub, so things about how the stock market works, how money works, how gold works, Bitcoin, self-managed super. The stories we've got from people that have just retired who have now lost 40% of their retirement money. And they were trying to get into gold and cash and being told by their fund manager, oh no, don't worry about it, or it's going to take 10 days, you should have sold already, don't sell, it'll bounce back. And sure enough, it just keeps going down. So these are the horror stories we're getting. Hopefully we can provide as much education we can for everyone about what your options are. Now, if you want all my daily updates and you want to join the group, just remember, anything that's related to the coronavirus, we've got this daily thread each day, guys. So 33 comments in the first hour. I mean, this just shows you how much is happening and how this situation is changing minute to minute. So thanks to everyone in the community. You guys have been brilliant as always. 44 members this week, so welcome to you guys. Now, the Fed a couple of days ago announced more bailouts. They're going to start bailing out mutual funds now. So they're going to print more money and they're going to start to buy, bad debt, bad paper. Like we see in other countries, corporate bonds, and then next up it's probably stocks. So, anything that was you paid too much for, again, the rich aren't allowed to lose money. The Fed will just buy off them for whatever they paid for it. Now, the Fed have had to start bailing out other countries around the world, so they're extending these credit lines. I think Australia got somewhere to the tune of $30 to $50 billion. Again, just pumping in US dollars because everyone's selling all their assets, and everyone wants to go into US dollars or get out of the Aussie dollar. And I'll talk about that in just a second. Now, the second TARP bailout, this was the huge bailout at the GFC. The same engineers that got that huge bailout for Wall Street last time have got back together and they're throwing around figures around A further $3 trillion for different companies and whatnot. But look, I think the figure is going to be far, far bigger than that. It's not just America. ECB, huge bailout, huge purchases of debt going to be conducted. Christine Lagarde basically said there's no limit to our commitment to the euro, and by that she basically means to print money. So unlimited, we're going to print as much money as we need to till the end of the year. It was just 41 days ago when Philip Lowe came out, and I was very critical at the time. I did a video saying that he's going to eat his words when he says no more rate cuts, no QE in Australia. Sure enough, only two things you can't print, guys, are gold, silver as well, Bitcoin, other cryptos as well, I guess, but particularly Bitcoin. The mortgages, so good news there. Reading the fine print, again, you've got to apply for this once you've lost your job or whatnot, if you're experiencing hardship, and you can pause the repayments on your home loans. I'm not 100% sure if the interest accrues. I don't think so, but guys, if you're in the industry, correct me on that in the comments below. Same for businesses. They're extending all this credit and these loans, but that's not what you need. If you've lost your job or if you've got zero customers, you don't need a loan to borrow money. You need demand. So again, hopefully these things help people to some degree, but what we need is basically the government to pick up the slack and be putting enough money in people's pockets for them to survive and for them to go out and spend at shops, on just the staples where they can, groceries, healthcare. It's going to be a tough time. Our grandparents went through a depression. It's not going to be like life was for probably weeks or months. But, we're going to be fine if everyone gets their act together and looks after each other. And we need money in the pockets of those people who've lost their jobs that can't afford to pay, their rent this week. Hopefully renters get a break as well as homeowners. But people that can't afford food and whatnot, that's the worry. That's when crime rates can pick up and things like that. And we don't want to see that. So the Aussie dollar, it's been an absolutely horrid week. You can't quite see that capitulation behind me, sorry guys, but down to 55 cents. It fell off a cliff. It was 70 cents a couple of weeks ago. Something we've been warning about. If you haven't watched our documentary, Australia, the Coming Financial Crisis, we outlined that this was where Australia was heading. Weak stock market, weak housing market, weak currency, and unfortunately our economy is not looking good either, and a lot of job losses that are coming. So one thing that no one's talking about still is the housing market. We've just reinflated it almost back to those record highs, and it's about to turn around again soon, in my opinion. We've got the most leveraged banks in the world. So someone like Bendigo Bank, 900% their mortgage books compared to the actual market cap of the business, because of the way that they leverage up. You put down your $50,000, you get a $500,000 loan. So look, this is their exposure. All the banks in similar boat there, where if people start defaulting and whatnot, hopefully those defaults do stop if people can put their mortgages on pause. And that's what we basically have to prevent the banks from crashing. So trillions of dollars around the world, it's all looking for a new home. Think about the current environment we're in. Currency devaluation has now hit a record pace. You can't make this stuff up. I think I said $1 trillion a month of QE would be needed. We're up to $1 trillion a day with some of these markets that are being rescued, bailed out, stimulated, repoed, whatever you want to call it. Social isolation means more people are going to be, online shopping, digital commerce. So these are the sort of properties that people are looking for. 24/7 uptime. Not being able to pay on the weekends. I think we're going to see our internet, particularly in Australia, be strained. So it wouldn't surprise me to see downtime with card payments and the networks. Woolworths today have just announced no cash. So that's a real worry for me. Again, they're saying, germs and whatnot. But again, that contradicts what our medical advisors are telling the government, that there's been very low community spread and transmission. A majority of our cases are from people returning from overseas, is what we're being told. So I'm not sure how it's spreading with cash. Anyway, 24/7 liquidity. A lot of people found out the hard way that the stock you're holding, the fund you're in, the listed investment company, the trust, the ETF. The liquidity is not there. You're super, you can't sell. It's going to take 10 days to sell. As much as Bitcoin's been volatile lately, it's a 24/7 market. You can get in and out whenever you want. Can't be confiscated, easy to store. A lot of people, gold and silver, big advocate of it, but the reality is that a lot of people can't store huge lugs of metal safely and securely at their flat or something like that. So we need to be mindful of that. In that instance, we do have the digital gold and silver and trusted. So look, I did a video on all your options, the pros and cons of both and the counterparty risk of each. A lot of interest in how do I buy the digital gold and silver tokens that are backed up in Ainsley Bullion's vaults, for example. So watch that video that I did yesterday or the day before that explains the pros and cons of each, if you haven't watched that already. But I just wanted to mention quickly, this kind of reminds me of when everyone is asking me how to buy Bitcoin when it goes parabolic and goes to 20,000. You've got to remember that you're probably, you're buying the top. Everyone's flocking in. And this is what I'm a little bit worried about with these people that are all asking me, well, how do I sell Aussie dollars and get out of Aussie dollars when we've just had this capitulation and we've gone down for the past 10 years? Well, the time to get out or to short it, if you're a trader, was any time in the past 10 years. And I said in our group when I posted that video, the guys, that I think we're probably going to see a bounce and that now isn't the exact time that I'd be getting out of it. So look, if you've done it for a long-term thing or protection, or you've gone into, say, gold or silver or Bitcoin or something else, then that's fine. But if you're actually looking at this as just an Aussie dollar versus a US dollar trade, we've already seen a 10% bounce. So that's when you've got to maybe put your trader hat on a little bit. But if you're not too fussed about the really long term, I don't think things are looking great in Australia. So I don't think we're in any place where we're going to see a lot of Aussie dollar strength. But on the flip side, maybe things get so bad in the US that the US dollar starts to weaken. But for the time being, there's just enormous demand for US dollars. So that's the financial side of things. A quick look at the healthcare side of things. We've passed 250,000 cases now, 11,000 deaths, 90,000 recovered. So these are the ratios. They've stayed pretty similar for the time being. The worrying thing is that the exponential growth is accelerating after it was flattening off. Some positive news now. So high hopes that a few of these treatments could work, and there's been some good positive results in Australia as well. A couple of drugs for HIV, so Resmavir was one of them, chloroquine, hydroxychloroquine, conjunction therapy with azithromycin. I'll get out my whiteboard and put my pharmacist hat on and do some videos about how they work. But that's definitely looks like it's promising rather than having no hopes and a vaccine still months or a year away. Out of China, I've been getting some questions about natural therapies. Guys, anything that you think is going to help your immune system, it's traditionally been used for thousands of years. There's no harm in doing it. There's actually a couple of little trials now with higher dose vitamin C. We've seen high dose vitamin C treatments floated for everything from cancer to the flu, and now this virus. So again, we love to have wider studies done. We can't say for sure, but this was very interesting and something that's been maybe suppressed. People have been saying to me in the Western media, I've got to be careful what I say on YouTube and whatnot. But this was the video in that article, really, really popular. So third clinical study, high dose intravenous vitamin C. So look, vitamin C is water soluble. Basically, you can load up huge doses and you'll just weed it out. So it's not like some of these other drugs where if you were to give someone 100 times the recommended dose of basically any other medication, you're going to hit the lethal threshold. It's going to do some harm to their kidneys, their liver, a biological process in your body. Whereas vitamin C, obviously there's exceptions, but there's a lot of cases where you can give people, huge doses and it doesn't really have any side effects. Now, why I've been pushing the narrative so hard, and I've copped a lot of criticism this week and some threats, some not nice stuff as well. But this is why, because this is the attitude, whether it's Donald Trump, hey, it's under control in the US. Not to mention him telling people the stock market's starting to look pretty good 2 weeks ago on the 24th. It's crashed a lot since. But the attitude's the same in Australia with Scott Morrison last week tweeting it's more like a bad flu. And they're still, the message they're giving to people, I think they're trying to stop the panic a little bit, the panic buying of the toilet paper and whatnot. But people aren't taking it seriously. And I'll put this out. We hit 692 cases yesterday. We're not doing enough testing. The doctors I talked to, the criteria for a lot of places is still if you've been overseas or in contact with a known case. So if you've got all the symptoms, you're really sick, a lot of the time they can't test you and they'll turn you away and say, look, just self-isolate. But the reality is people, if your partner's lost their job or you're a single mum and whatnot, you've got to go to work and put food on the table until you're getting this support from the government, these handouts. So it's such a tough situation for people. Italy, obviously different circumstances. I know aging population density. They've got a very good healthcare system though. And this is what, at the start of last week, I said Australia is going to see hundreds of cases by the end of next week. And people laughed at me on Facebook posts. Oh, Nugget, you're a fearmonger, blah, blah, blah. It's not going to happen in Australia. And here we are. My prediction is that next week we are going to see thousands of cases. And we are following this curve scarily accurately the same as Italy. So slightly slower growth than some of these worse countries like Iran, but we're nowhere near flattening the curve. Like the government are pretending that we're copying South Korea and Hong Kong, Japan and whatnot, and we're not. We're picking and choosing some parts and not doing others. So let's just refresh this, see if we've got another update this morning. Which it doesn't look like we've had. This is still only the latest data from 7 p.m. last night. So we're already up to 876 cases. We're going parabolic. We're going to have 1,000 by today, 1,200, 1,300 by tomorrow. It's growing at 20, 30% a day exponentially. It's not slowing down. This is the worry. Yesterday, we've got news that there's 2,700 passengers that were on a cruise ship docked in New South Wales and Sydney. All those people are now scattered across Australia from Tasmania, Queensland, Perth, all throughout New South Wales. If these guys are tourists or Aussies, they're out, they've bought lunch, they've gone to the supermarket when they've returned home, they've touched surfaces, they're breathing. No one in Australia is wearing masks yet. And the message is that there's very little community spread at the moment. I mean, this is what really worries me, and this is exactly why I'm being vocal. And I'll cop it on the chin for the people that want to send me, threats and call me names and whatnot. The doctors, the immunologists, the pathologists that I talk to every night and check in with them to see how they're going mental health wise. A lot of these people are pretty broken. You've got no idea unless you go and watch some of the videos from the Italian hospitals with the people with the masks, with the beeping going on, people crying, people dying, the army now having to come in to ship out bodies in Italy. It's that bad. I just think that we are still in a little bubble here in Australia. I thought our leaders were going to announce some big changes and finally pull the pin and put in social isolation and quarantine for everyone. Instead, they announced that everyone needs to maintain an imaginary 2 by 2 meters square around themselves at all times. So I'm not sure how you do that in schools as a teacher. I'm not sure how you do that at workplaces, public transport, in the elevators, at the supermarket. I mean, they're just absolutely kidding themselves with these measures. This is yesterday at Bondi. Similar scenes in most public places around Australia, at bars and that last night. People just aren't taking this seriously. So you can call me what you want, but I'm going to be vindicated just like I've been vindicated for the past 2 months since I did that first video. 11,000 auctions. I'm not sure if that's a typo. That seems like a lot to me, but let me know in the comments. Auctions, 100 people going through a home, touching. Stainless steel is where this virus appears to live the longest on. Door handles, ovens, kitchens, appliances. people gathering together in tight groups around the auction and going through the home. I can't think of a worse way that you could spread this. And someone saying that, I'm not having a go at the industry itself. This is a side effect of the government not putting in stricter measures. But I think we're just going to look back and go, oh my God, we should have prevented these sort of things from happening. The mainstream media, apparently property is about to burst to record highs. There's panic buying happening everywhere. Oh my God, with people losing their jobs, I don't see how you can be bullish on the stock market, the economy, and therefore house prices in this environment. But tell me if I've got something wrong. And finally, Woolworths have put in a range of fresh measures. I'm sure other supermarkets will follow and businesses. But the big one was banning cash, as we talked about before. So, I mean, we've spoken about it at length, the excuses and whatnot that were going to come. But yeah, it's official. You can't use cash in supermarkets now. So pay as you go. Sorry, pay wave, pay as you go. Gee whiz, Afterpay and those shares have been absolutely smashed this week. I think off the top of my head, Afterpay's down 75% this month. Let's go from that high to that low. Yeah, over 75%. So that's that. Let's have a quick look at this daily close. A few minutes left, and then we'll read some of these comments. So ideally, guys, we want to close as high as we can here and form a hammer. We don't want to form a spinning top doji like this. This would be more of a reversal pattern in my mind. On the 4 hour, that's not too bad though. If we can get that dragonfly, maybe a bit of a bounce, but then I think on the daily time frame we'd be looking to roll over unless we get some buying. And I mean, one thing I will just mention, we've had a record number of people ask us how to buy gold and silver. So a lot of that is sold out at the moment. You can still get hold of the gold and silver tokens on CoinSpot. I'm not sure if the ANZ website is still doing them, but don't leave it to the last minute. There's other ways to get exposure on FTX. The link down below, they have PAXG and XAUT, these two tokens there that are gold tokens. As well. So there's plenty of ways you can get exposure if you're desperate short term. The other one I wanted to mention though was the brokers. So we have had an insane amount of people wanting to buy over $50,000. So Carbon Brown will help you out. I think it's over $2. Hivex over $50,000. Guys, if you're in our group, if you're one of our members, just send me a message or the team, and I'll give you the number of my my personal broker, and they'll look after you over the phone for those larger amounts. But there's a real, I guess, dichotomy where we're seeing people lose their jobs, and obviously those people don't have spare money, they're not going to be buying Bitcoin, but we're seeing the people that do have wealth, they want to park somewhere safe. So whether or not that is the US dollar, they're fearful of the Aussie dollar continuing to weaken. A lot of people, we've seen people buy $500,000 of gold and silver this week. And people obviously also viewing Bitcoin or maybe the stable coins in the short term as where they want to park some money, on a hardware wallet, on your Trezor, on your Ledger. We've got a couple of spare ones there. Might do another giveaway soon. But being able to move that, the 24/7 liquidity, like I just spoke about, not having to worry about, I've got US dollars or Aussie dollars, but it's in a bank. I can't move that. I can't get that into an exchange on a weekend or after hours, or if I try and send it to another account, it's going to take a few business days. So, just the properties of crypto, that 24/7 nature, really, really important. All right, so we are down to the last 30 seconds before this daily close. Stock market's closing on the lows. Gold's had a pretty disappointing week, but you guys know what I think about all this. We've seen a scramble for liquidity. It's very clear, to the tune of trillions of dollars. And once the dust settles, the bullish case for Bitcoin and gold, it's the only two things that can't be printed in this world where central banks are printing trillions of dollars. Okay, I'll have a quick look through some of these questions. Gee whiz, guys, we've got them flowing in at the moment. I'm not sure on the stats, the number of people that haven't been tested. I'd love to know, but all I know is that there's now about 2 months worth of kits in Australia until they get their next order. So they're starting to ration them, and the doctors are telling me they're having to test less people than they already were because of that rationing. The pharmacology of this disease, we're hearing stories that it attacks the lungs. The virus attacks those cells in the lungs. You can think of it as punching little holes in those little air sacs that are like grapes. And once those little sacs start to burst, they can't do their job, and so you're getting less oxygen in. So that's why we're seeing people with having to be oxygenated and ventilated to help them breathe. But it can also attack other organs. So we've heard a couple of stories about people with no prior heart conditions having heart attacks and heart failure, and they're young, healthy people. So that is something that we need to be mindful of. I do want to mention there's been stories about Nurofen and ibuprofen, which is the drug in Nurofen, being bad, and we don't have the evidence or the studies yet, but pharmacologically that makes sense. So any drug that's an anti-inflammatory, well, it helps with your fever and your aches and pains, but it's constricting. It is stopping the inflammation of blood vessels when you injure yourself. So by constricting things like, it can constrict, your heart vessels. So that's why you can't have anti-inflammatories when you have a bad heart, for example. You can't have them if you've got bad kidneys because it's constricting that blood flow to your kidneys and can lead to kidney failure. So when we're hearing these stories about the coronavirus possibly, attacking other organs like your heart and your kidney and your lungs, again, can constrict your airways. So people with asthma can't have anti-inflammatories. So all those things make sense to me, and that's something that we should be mindful of. If you've got a fever, have Panadol. Don't have, Advil or any of these anti-inflammatories. Trump is doing a great job compared to reckless Australian government. Yeah, I think you'd have to sort of say that the US have really taken it seriously. Towards the end of this week, was it New York, maybe LA as well? Different degrees of social isolation, complete lockdown, non-essential travel. They're the sort of things that I would love to see. Shutting down schools. And I know there's no perfect solution for those teachers, but if you've got two parents and one of them's a healthcare worker, hopefully the other one can look after, because this excuse of 30% of healthcare workers wouldn't be able to work if they had to babysit their kids. I just don't believe those stats. And people saying, well, the grandparents can't look after them because that's bad for old people. We've got to band together where you've got that friend or that neighbor. We've lost that sense of community. Do you have someone that you trust that can look after your kids? And it's not like, it's a bit inconvenient. This is almost like a wartime. We've just got to do whatever it takes. We've got to free up our doctors, our nurses, our pharmacists, the virologists, immunologists, pathologists, people that have lost their job. There are other countries now that are doing fast-track training, retired nurses and doctors, getting them out of retirement. We've got to be doing everything we can to get these people as much help as they can. Give them a rest. They need sleep. They need to de-stress and unwind after they've just seen people die at work. They're not robots. The army, great to see a few of our army bases being fired up to create face masks. Those test kits, I'm not sure if we can get the raw materials needed. I believe that's where the shortage is. It's not that we can't actually manufacture them there in Australia. So, we've got to just band together, do whatever we can. And I just want to share a website with you that one of our members put together. And this has got plenty of information and all the latest. I'm not sure if it's around the world. So this is by William, who's one of our original members. Most of our 1,000 members have been with us for 3 years now. And so this is covidhelp.com.au, and this is putting up all the latest, bonuses, handouts, freebies, important information from around Australia. So great work, William. I know he's been working night and day on this website this week to get it up. covidhelp.com.au. Australians have their heads in the sands. Yeah, not you guys. Most of not you guys. Alex, the fault in your logic is you say exactly what the mainstream media says. I don't think I'm saying exactly what the mainstream media says. I'm pretty sure I'm saying something very different, Brett. So. Yeah, we know the media's got those other interests, Murdoch media in particular in Australia. Yeah, good point. FTPOS fees, paywave fees when you tap and go. Another way for the banks to make more money. A lot of places now telling people not to get cash out of the bank. That's going to be a big narrative this week because we know the banks are. Well, they changed the reserve requirements in America, but also Australia this week because so many people are trying to withdraw and get into what they consider to be safe. Perth Mint also have a gold-backed crypto. That's right. BTC decoupling from stocks would be, the ultimate. That's what we want. Well, guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. That's about 40 minutes. Nearly 1,000 tuning in. Appreciate your time. If you want to join the group, guys, head over to our website. We'll continue to do those to-the-minute updates. If you've got those friends and family, please send them over to Nuggets News. That's why we created all these resources to teach people everything they need to know about these tough times. Show them your favorite videos of ours explaining negative interest rates, gold and silver, the recession that's coming in Australia, the video I did about coronavirus. Thank you so much for those of you that are being kind and supportive. This is a really testing period for everyone, and hopefully we're going to all get through this together. We're going to be fine. It's just a matter of, battening down the hatches in the short term. So thanks, guys. I will talk to you again tomorrow. Cheers.